Okay. Hi, everyone. So, this is my presentation for the Live Coders Conference, and the title of it is Indoctrination to the Cult of Geometry via JavaScript. This is going to be a bit of a live presentation as well, so I'll tell you when you get there. You'll know, and I'll give you some time, and you can choose to code along if you wish. So, you might be asking, who is this person that's trying to recruit you into a fake cult? Well, my name is Aren Davey. I am currently enrolled in Carnegie Mellon University's Computer Science and Fine Arts program. I am a 2020 Processing Foundation Fellow, and I am a generative artist. I'm also a Twitch streamer, and I'm self-declared shape aficionado. Now, if you want to go ahead and find me at Twitter, you can see that on the bottom left there, and it's AAH_DEE. My Twitch is Cozy Coding, and my GitHub is over there on the bottom right. So I'll describe a bit about my fellowship. I'm a 2020 Processing Foundation Fellow, and the Processing Foundation is a foundation that helps develop and outreach the frameworks processing in P5JS, which I'll be talking about today. And for my fellowship project, I chose to start this Twitch account and basically go ahead and do some live tutorials of P5JS and a lot of generative art and things like that. So if you want to see that, you can head over to my Twitch. So usually with processing in P5, I tend to do different artworks similar to these. As I said before, I am a shape aficionado, so I absolutely adore shapes, especially hexagons. I really, really, really like the shape hexagons. I'm also developing a library called P5 Grid, which is in P5. Which I'll talk about more. I know I'm talking about P5 a decent amount. And it basically helps with rendering hexagons and going ahead and putting on a grid. That GIF right there actually is an example of my gridding library, P5. So you might be asking, well, what's the cult of geometry? Because it sounds suspicious, but I swear to you, it is not. Now, the Code of Geometry, it is a coalition devoted to the shapes of the universe, and members appreciate the edges and angles of all polygons. They are active in the research of geometric shapes in their city, country, and beyond, and we provide outreach to those that are lacking in geometric knowledge. This sounds official and all, but I assure you, it's not. The only member is me, as I literally created this for this presentation, and you can join if you wish, but you don't necessarily have to. But if you want to join, you must really, really, really like shapes. Don't worry, I can tell you the easy way to join. And you can join via creative coding. Now, for creative coding is essentially just using code to go ahead and create different visuals, like I've done before. That's basically it. It's just creating art with code. And in my opinion, as I do this basically every single day, it's pretty great. Now, there's 3 frameworks that I just want to touch upon, and I'm ranging them from the easiest to the hardest difficulty. So first, for the easiest, is P5JS, which is in JavaScript. This is essentially all web-based, so you can go ahead and just, if you want to import it to a website, you can totally go ahead and do that. It's super radical and easy. The next one, which is a little bit harder to work with, is processing, and that uses Java or Python. There's two flavors of it in Java and Python, so you can choose which one to work with. And processing, in my opinion, is kind of like P5JS's big brother, that goes to college. And the next one, which I think is the most difficult to work with, but is the most powerful, is Open Frameworks, which is in C++. This is the framework that people usually use in the industry when they go ahead and do creative coding for large-scale projects, like if they're doing a commission for a company or something of the sorts, or if they want to do something that involves a lot of different libraries and they want to merge it together, they would use Open Frameworks for that. Now, as this is an indoctrination to the code of geometry via JavaScript, we're going to be using P5JS, right? And P5JS is super, super, super easy to pick up even if you don't have experience with code or programming, as the way that the library has been developed, it's been developed for artists and beginners typically, so it uses a lot of common sense in English, so to speak. There isn't necessarily a lot of tech jargon in there. Also, there is no setup required, which is pretty great. And most of these examples that I showed you before in this presentation are made in P5.js, so you can truly do a lot with this framework. Now, if you go to the website, you're greeted by a friendly paragraph, which I'm going to read out to you. Hello, P5.js is a JavaScript library for creative coding with a focus on making coding accessible and inclusive for artists, designers, educators, beginners, and anyone else. P5.js is free and open source, which is great, by the way, because we believe software and the tools to learn it should be accessible to everyone. Using the metaphor of a sketch, P5.js has a full set of drawing functionality. However, you're not limited to a drawing canvas. You can think of the whole browser page as your sketch, including HTML5 objects for text, input, video, webcam, and sound, so on and so forth. So essentially, you can go ahead and embed P5.js into your website, as I mentioned before, and anything that HTML can touch, you can mess with it in P5.js. So it's super cool. And if you look at that little button, right below that paragraph, you'll see it says Start Creating with the P5 Editor. And this is the P5 Editor. It is super simple, and when you first open it, it basically generates a quick blank sketch for you, so you can go ahead and just type whatever you'd like, And if you don't want to work online on the P5 editor, say you want to work locally on your computer, you can go ahead and download the copy of the library, and you can just put it in the folder that you're working on and then drop it in the script tag. And if you are actually developing a website that's going to be hosted online, you can go ahead and grab the P5.js version that's stored on the content delivery network. Alright, so this is a live demonstration, as I mentioned before. So you can go ahead and hop over to the web editor if you wish. You can use that chat command. I think there's a couple other ones for a link. And I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, as I already have a tab open. So I'm going to give, if people want to go ahead and code with me, I'm going to go ahead and just wait about 30 or so seconds. I have a little timer for myself, so I know what the 30 seconds is. Okay. I'm going to say about here. Alright, so I'm going to say that those who want to join are there. So, alright, so here is the a standard P5.js sketch, right? And there are two functions there. There's the setup function and the draw function. And essentially what the setup function does, it basically just sets up your P5.js sketch and is only called once during the entire execution of the code. And the draw function, which is where you can go ahead and draw whatever you like, is called once per frame. So essentially it'll just reiterate over and over again. So there's a friendly reference, or the P5.js reference, which is super useful, as if you go ahead and if I click on just the circle example, it has a visual example, which you can also choose to edit if you wish, and essentially just, if I may, you can edit and run it, and it will do, oh, that's a very large circle, excuse me. Yeah, you can edit and run it, and you can also mess with the examples in there on the reference, and it gives a short description and it tells you the syntax. So we're basically just going to quickly draw a circle. So if I may, we have circle, and we can say 20, 20, and we can say the size will be 50, similar to there, and we can run it, and there's our circle over there, right? So I mentioned earlier that draw is only called once per frame. So thing is, each frame, right now the sketch renders the background and then it renders the circle, right? So we can have really cool things if we actually go ahead and take out the background. So if we run it again, it'll just basically be a totally blank transparent canvas and then just a circle there. Now, if we were to put our background, we can put our background in setup too, and it would still run, but we can also do pretty interesting things because P5.js takes, different input. And one of the input that it takes is the mouse coordinates. So if you say mouse X, and this will say mouse Y, and then the size of 50, when we run it again, and essentially just tracks our mouse cursor. So we can essentially just go ahead and just draw this little circle over and over again, Now, if we were to go ahead and paste the background back into the draw, we just have our little circle that's following our mouse, and we don't have that trail because we're drawing the background over and over and over again, right? So next thing we can talk about is, well, what if we don't want to have a linear circle? we want to have an ellipses, so to speak. And ellipses, that function is super similar to circle, as an ellipses is basically just a stretched out circle. So we can go ahead and copy this. Oh, there we go, and paste. And if you go check ellipses once more, it takes the x position, y position, the width, and the height of the circle. Oh, ellipses, sorry. So if you have the width, we can say 50, and then if you have that height, which will be 100, and bam, we have a very stretched out circle, or an ellipses, right? So as this is the cult of geometry, we want to look at different, forms besides just ellipses right now, right? So let's comment that out. This is just 2 backslashes, and essentially what a comment does, it just ignores the code just ignores that line. So this is like useful for putting notes and stuff. You can say like, draw is called once per frame, or something like that. Radical, cool. So if we go back to our reference, and we can see that you can grab a square. So let's just draw a square, right, real quick. Right, and then we can say square and 200, 200, and I think that's the size, so you can say 50, right? And we run that, and cool. So you might have noticed I put 200 to 200 instead, which is essentially half of the size of the canvas. And it could be tedious to write 200 and 200 over again. It also doesn't necessarily seem too natural. So instead you can say width exactly divided by 2, and then height divided by 2, and then 50, and it ends up in the exact same place. So even if you were to change the size of your canvas, it would still scale appropriately, because instead of entering those magic numbers, you go ahead and put down the, the actual reference, like the width and the height. So if you're going to go back to that, cool. So let's get some different forms on there. So we can have triangle, and triangle is basically the x, y, y positions of the 3 vertices of it. So we can say, let's see, 350 and 300, and then 350 and 150, and then 370 and 320, 325. Cool. And if we run that, and there's our very, very, very thin triangle, we can make that a bit wider by setting this one to 300. Cool. Ah, sugar. I meant this one to 300. Cool, there we go. And if you want to go ahead and, have more shapes, they're all there. So the cool thing about P5 is that you're not necessarily constrained to these 2D primitives. You can make your own via the begin shape function. So if you were, and the cool thing about begin shape is that you can set it such that it only delivers the points, or if it just has lines, or if it has a very open shape, or if it closes it off. And you can do a lot of things with this. P5 is very, very fleshed out, which I enjoy. So we're just going to go ahead and copy this code, as I do not necessarily want to take out all the time to type out all these vertices, as I do have an end part of my presentation. Cool. And we can run that, and we're over here just hanging out with that. Yeah, what else can I talk to you about that? Yeah, you can draw different forms, and you can also choose to make your own shape. And the cool thing about P5 is that you're definitely not constrained to these drab colors. You can choose whatever colors you want. And actually, this argument for background is basically just the grayscale color from where 0 is black and white is 255. So you can go ahead and set that to black if you'd like, or if you want to actually put a color, you can throw in some RGB values. 200 and 200. Bam. Yeah. So you can also choose what color you want for the shapes, if you want to fill it in a certain color, or if you want to make the stroke outside thicker, or if you want to change that color. And it's super easy to do that, because if we go ahead and we type stroke weight, which will be the thickness, and we say to 4, right? then the stroke is going to be 4 for all of these. But say, what if you don't want to have the stroke weight to be 4 for all of those, and say you want the square to have a different stroke weight? So what you can do is, before we call the function square, we can just say stroke weight 2, so to speak, 2. And then run it, and therefore now the square has a stroke weight of 2, and then it would set the stroke weight to 4 for everything else, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm also going to go ahead and draw a circle real quick on width width divided by 2. I also typed this badly on my stream. And then we're gonna say 20. And we run it, and we can see that right now this circle, we'll make it a bit larger just so people can easily see, this circle right now is essentially drawn over the square. But what if we didn't want that and we wanted the square to be drawn over the circle? So what we do is we would call that circle function first, and then it gets drawn, and then the square would get drawn on top of the circle. So essentially the order of appearance for a sketch would be, the later it is in the draw function, the later it is, it's going to be on top of all the shapes that are called before it. Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. Excuse me, words are hard. So now we can go ahead and choose to change the fill of our shapes, and we can do that by saying fill, and I already had like a couple colors picked. So we will drop this hex color over here, and hex colors have to be passed in as a string. There we go. And we have all our shapes are now a very nice purple, and if we want to have our stroke to be different colors, and we also have to go ahead and let's grab this one right here. Oh, oopsie. A bit of a typo. There we go. And now our strokes are a weird, like, what? bluish purple. So yeah, those are some things. That's just a quick demo of P5.js, and there are so many things that you can do with it. For example, if you just scroll down the reference, you can go ahead and see that you can access some DOM elements. You can do like very civic complicated things with rendering. You can even able to access the local storage, and you're also, your typical arrays, data manipulation. You can have certain events, so you can have things when like a certain key is pressed, you can have it render which one it is, and you can also track your mouse movement and etc. It also supports touch, which is pretty great. So yeah, that is my very quick demo of P5.js. Let's go back to my presentation here. View present. Okay, there you go. All right, you just did your very first P5.js sketch, and you're totally ready to join my fake geometric cult. Now, I'm gonna talk real fast about the other frameworks that I mentioned before, processing and open frameworks. So if you go to the processing website, processing.org, if I recall correctly, this is what you'll be greeted with. And as I mentioned before, it is essentially just P5.js, but more local to your computer, and it uses Java. So it's a bit more complicated. I would suggest it for people who are intermediate with programming and have tried some sort of like creative coding before. But the thing is, luckily, alongside with P5.js, there's a lot of text tutorials. Well, there's a lot of tutorials in itself, sorry. There's a lot of tutorials for processing. And if you go onto the website, you can see it there. They have a lot of references. And if you are really intrigued in researching processing, you can go ahead and check out the book, The Nature of Code by Dan Schiffman. He's real great. He's my advisor for my fellowship project. This book is totally free online. If you would like to support them, you can go ahead and buy the physical book, but the entire thing is already available online. And he also has a YouTube channel called The Coding Train. I'm sure some of you guys have heard about it. I did a collaboration with him the other day, and he does a lot of P5.js tutorials as well. So processing is very, very, very well supported. There are a lot of contributed libraries for processing. You can go ahead and use open source control with processing, and then you can also go ahead and access your computer's hardware peripherals with processing. You can choose to implement QR codes with it. You can go ahead and there's a computational 3D geometry library. That was a bit hard to say. There's support for a simple multi-touch, which is the touch on most Windows computers. Actually, I think all Windows computers have all touchscreen enabled Windows computers have simple multi-touch. And there's also Box2D for processing, which is essentially just JBox2D, which is a physics library for Java. There's also GLSL, so shaders. You can throw that in processing. There is Connect support in processing. There's also oscilloscope and laser support in processing. A lot of people use processing, guys. And it's super, super great for creative coding and just making any sort of making any sort of computer graphics. Actually, there is now a library for embroidery, for generating embroidery files, which I'm super, super excited for because I love embroidery, and a lot of embroidery machines and embroidery software are thousands of dollars. But my advisor in school is making a free open source processing embroidery software that anyone can use as long as they have an embroidery machine. And that's like the power of open source, because it's accessible to everyone and it's free. So all of these libraries can be found on the processing website. And I will say though, if you're interested in looking at these libraries, that some of them require an older version of processing, which is processing 2.0. I would say make sure you read the documentation and the installation of those libraries before going ahead and trying to work with it, because you don't want to have some incompatibility issues. And then I'm going to quickly touch upon open frameworks, which is, like, as I mentioned before, the industry standard of web processing, and it's an open source C++ toolkit for creative coding, as it calls itself. I've worked with it before, and I can assure you that it is very great and very powerful, as you can essentially just throw anything at it and it'll work with it somehow. There's OpenGL support. You can do a lot of shader. There's OpenCV. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. I know that in this video they have someone using that video right there. There's someone using a receipt printer with open frameworks and having a little racing game with it. It's absolutely amazing. So just to recap, if you want to get into creative coding, there are 3 different tracks. Are you new to programming and graphics? You should touch up on P5.js. As I mentioned before, it's in JavaScript, and JavaScript is super friendly, and JavaScript is the most used programming language in the world, I think, if I recall it. Yeah, most industry people use it. So if you're new to programming and graphics, you touch upon P5.js, and it's super easy to understand. If you're comfortable with programming and computational arts, you should go look at processing, as it uses Java and it's a bit more powerful and robust, and you can do a lot more cool stuff with it. And if you've been doing this for years and you have definitely known everything that I've talked about in this presentation, then you should use open frameworks, and you probably already are using open frameworks. So yeah, that's a quick intro to creative coding via JavaScript. So thank you so much for coming ahead to my talk. I'll tell you about me before. I'll tell you about me again. I'm Aren Davey, and I'm in Carnegie Mellon University's Computer Science and Fine Arts program, Processing Foundation Fellow. I stream on Twitch. I love shapes. I love hexagons. I'm also a generative artist. And if you want to go ahead and follow me on Twitter, that's AAH_DEE. If you want to follow me on Twitch and get more robust creative P5.js introduction examples like I just did right now, you can go ahead and follow and subscribe at twitch.tv/cozycoding. And if you want to go to my GitHub and look at that hexagon library that I've been working on for about a year now, that's right here, right there, github.com/Audi. And yeah, thank you for listening, and we're going to go back to your host now. Thank you so much for coming and hearing me out. Bye.